Hello guys, this is your fanfic Sojo and we are back with our new fanfic, which is what if Naruto got banished and build his harem instead of returning Konoha part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. The training had started 30 minutes ago, even now it seemed like it had only just begun. Kushina had made 2 Kage Bunshin to take care of Hinata and Naruto while she dealt with her son. Her clones knew specifically what to teach the 2 girls, but Kushina had to actually start from the basics with Naruto. She first did an affinity test and discovered that Naruto had a wind affinity, which was her speciality. He lacked so much knowledge, but she would not be deterred. She gave him scrolls that had different styles of taijutsu, ninjutsu, kenjutsu and dojutsu. Even if he didn't have one, it couldn't hurt to be prepared. She told him to make 4 clones to handle the scrolls while he stayed back with her. Why shouldn't I be the one trying to learn this? Naruto asked confusedly. He had figured that as long as his relationship with his mother was professional, then he could at least tolerate being in her presence. Well, that's just it. You are learning, Kushina said while looking at the 3 clones, who were by the trees and reading the scrolls. No, I'm not. My Bunshin are, Naruto said irritably. Well, Naruto, that's the secret to the Kage Bunshin, and that's why it's such a difficult jutsu to perform, Kushina said. I don't get it. To make a Kage Bunshin you need a lot of chakra at your disposal, as well as careful equal distribution between you and the clone. It's so hard to perform that it was labeled a Jonin rank jutsu. The technique has many advantages. Like beating up people, Naruto said pointedly. It isn't just about that. The jutsu has a memory link between the user and the clone, Kushina said. So, does that mean we share memories? If anything, he was even more confused the more he tried to figure out where Kushina was going with what she was saying. Technically, yes. When you summon a clone, it immediately has every single bit of your own memory, but when it performs tasks and duties, you will not be aware of your clone's activities until the jutsu cancels, in which all the memories of the clone's activities would be brought to you, Kushina explained as straightforward as possible. So I can only get a Bunshin's memory after it pops. I don't remember that happening when I fought Mizuki, Naruto said suspiciously. What was this woman up to? Was she trying to sabotage him? It is most likely due to the fact that your body and mind hadn't fully adjusted to the use of a jutsu as great and as complex as the Kage Bunshin, Kushina explained. So right now I'm learning that stuff? Naruto questioned while pointing to his clones, who were still occupied with the scrolls. That's right, Kushina said happily. Is that it? Naruto questioned in surprise and annoyance. Here he was, thinking that she was actually going to teach him something worthwhile, but all he was doing was reading. Well, his clones were, but that wasn't the point. He felt like she was just trying to treat him like some stupid child that couldn't grasp what being a shinobi was, and that made him feel worthless. Naruto. He was actually surprised with how serious she sounded when she said his name. You need to know the basics, no shortcuts. You need this so you have a foundation where you can build up more understanding on jutsu and survival skills a shinobi needs to utilize, Kushina said seriously. She was all sensei right now, and she had to admit that Naruto was very impatient. Naruto sighed. Once your clones are done, we will practice basic chakra usage and then I will teach you a jutsu, Kushina said. It was only fair, she would teach him everything she knew in time, it was his birthright. Naruto sighed again and then looked at his sister. Naruko was currently in a taijutsu battle with her mother's clone, dodging punches and kicks, giving counters in return. Although she was holding up her own, she knew her mother was still going easy on her. Their battle was fast, so fast that Naruto struggled to keep up with the two's movements on occasion. Naruto couldn't hold in his shock at watching his sister battle the Bunshin. She was quick, agile, and very precise in her abilities. She was going toe-to-toe with a Bunshin that was probably Jonin level, and she was actually holding up her own. Dust was even gathering beneath them due to their speeds alone. He didn't think he ever saw anyone move that fast, they were literally blurring. She was good, she was very good. Naruto quickly jumped back to avoid a jab that was aimed at her ribs. You're improving, but you're still very open on your left side, the clone said, accessing any faults that she can see. Naruto quickly went through some hand seals and then stared at her opponent seriously, Futon Daitapa. A fixed amount of concentrated wind charged at the Bunshin, but the clone quickly dodged the attack. The tree behind her wasn't so lucky, it was effortlessly cut in half. Naruto just couldn't take his eyes away from the battle, it was absolutely spectacular, even he could admit it to himself. Naruto seemed so powerful and he couldn't hide the burning envy he felt as he watched his sister fight. She was powerful and quick, combinations that he knew would be great to have, but alas he didn't even compare to her. He was getting depressed the more he watched Naruto. She was so out of his league that he couldn't fight back the bitter feeling of disappointment. It was like rubbing salt into the wound, like he was being told that he could never have what she had, that he was truly the dead last. He looked down, he felt like absolute crap. He didn't even protest when a hand landed on his shoulder and gently squeezed it. He looked up and saw Kushina looking at him with guilt and sorrow. If you ever want to be a great shinobi, they both looked back at the sparring match and saw Naruto making a small ball of spiraling chakra in her left hand, using her right hand to keep the left hand steady. If you ever want to be at her level, Naruto prepared herself, follow my teachings to the letter and I promise you, Naruto charged at the clone, I swear that I will make you the greatest Hokage that had ever lived. Rasengan. There was a loud explosion and part of the ground was replaced by a small hole where Naruto aimed, but the clone had managed to move away in time. That is a promise of a lifetime, Naruto, Kushina finished. It was a promise she was going to keep. She looked at him and noticed that he still looked depressed. She hesitated for a second and then gently held his face with both her hands and made him look into her eyes. Naruto is a prodigy, and so are you, I just know it, Kushina said lovingly. Naruto had to force himself not to waver his gaze, it was difficult to maintain with the way Kushina was looking at him. He didn't even know how to reply to what she said. I know you'll be Hokage. I know you'll be the best. I will not stop teaching every single thing I know. I will not stop showing you how amazing you are. I have so much faith in you, but you have to put your faith in me as well. If you let me in, let me truly be your sensei, then I promise I will put my heart and soul into you training, Kushina said with conviction. She wanted to be there as his mother as well, but even she knew that would not earn favor from him yet, so she would make do with what she had. This time Naruto did look away and removed himself from her grasp, much to Kushina's silent chagrin. He didn't know how to feel about what Kushina said, but he knew not to miss an opportunity to be able to do the same things Naruto is capable of. He nodded his head. Excellent, Kushina said with a small smile. She could tell that he still didn't like her much, but she accepted it for what it was, for now. Naruto had finished her training and her mother's bunshin had popped, so she made her way to her brother first. She heard what her mother said to Naruto and she felt really guilty for showing off, she didn't mean to. Ni-san, I'm sorry, Naruto said softly, she almost sounded like a wounded puppy, like she was the victim. For what? You were just training, Naruto said as evenly as possible, but Naruto wasn't stupid, she knew jealousy when she spotted it, but she understood. You will be better than me, Ni-san. I'm sure of it, Naruto said reassuringly, then made her way to Hinata. That was some sparring match, you're improving, the clone that was teaching Hinata said. Thanks, so what are you guys doing? Naruto asked curiously. Well, I'm trying to improve her Kekkei Genkai. I cannot teach her anything that would interfere with her clan's Jukin. So far we're just sparring so I can analyze her flaws and weaknesses, the clone said while staring at the girl who was across the field. They were still in the middle of their own fight. Hinata had watched Naruto's sparring match, it was so shocking. The girl was a powerhouse and Hinata had never seen anything like it. She was also told by the clone to take her training seriously if she ever wanted to improve. They had been sparring for a while now, and all Hinata had done was dodge the attacks and put her hands in front of her, possibly out of fear. The clone had let her get away with such tactics so far, but it seemed that her time was up. Do not lose focus in battle. You will get yourself killed, the clone said as she rushed to the surprised Hyuga girl. Hinata couldn't stop nor dodge the punch that came to her stomach, which sent her flying into the air and hitting the ground hard. She coughed and her body shook in obvious pain. Stand up, the clone ordered. Hinata couldn't follow as her body continued to shake. It felt like she was sparring with her father all over again. She really wanted to cry. You are a strong kunoichi. You can do this, Hinata. Stand up, the clone motivated. Hinata slowly moved her body. Her midsection was still in pain and she didn't think she could stand after just one punch. She really was hopeless. She quickly took a glance and was surprised to notice Naruto actually looking at her, and she blushed. She didn't know what it was. She really couldn't put it into words, but the thought of her crush looking at her sent a huge surge into her body. She screwed her face into that of determination and slowly, albeit with difficulty, stood on her feet. Her legs were shaking and she struggled to dull the pain. We are done for the day, the clone said when she saw that Hinata could not take any more. She noticed the look Hinata sent past her, but she did not know what the girl was looking at since she didn't follow her gaze. Whatever it was, maybe a recollection of memory, she wasn't sure, but it helped Hinata find inner strength, momentarily. Her legs gave out on her and Hinata fell, but she was grabbed and held before she even touched the ground, and when she looked up she noticed Kushina's clone smiling at her. You have a lot to improve from Hinata. You fear too much and you're indecisive in your actions, and that is a huge disadvantage. You're afraid to attack me and we really need to work on that. It's the only way to improve your skills among other things. Never underestimate your enemy and get distracted. You would be inviting defeat if you did so, the clone said as she started healing the depressed heiress. But I am proud of you. When you stood up, it showed me how determined you are. It showed me how much you're willing to improve no matter how much the pain. You did well today, Hinata. Well done, the clone said comfortingly. Hinata looked at the clone in shock. She didn't think she did that well. Hell, she thought she did horribly, like her father would say, but it seemed that Kushina thought differently. She felt happy. She rarely got any praise and it felt good not to be scolded or called weak for once. Well, you guys are free to go, the clone said and then popped. Did you enjoy the training? Naruto asked curiously. She didn't do much, just a light spar in which she was easily defeated, but she couldn't help the warm feeling in her heart as she said, yes, I did. They made their way to the real Kushina, although Hinata was using Naruto as some sort of shield from Naruto, but Naruto didn't mind. Kushina was still in the process of teaching Naruto the basics of chakra and its uses. So I've got hundreds of outlet spots in my body called chakra points? Naruto asked confusedly. Exactly, it is these specific points that allows the usage of chakra within your body. Every individual point affects your chakra flow. It is very important to keep this in mind when you are in battle, Kushina said seriously. Kasen, Hinata and I are finished, Naruto said tentatively. She didn't want to disrupt her brother's training. Good. You guys head home and Naruto. Kushina called. Yes, Naruto said. Don't wait up for me, Kushina said, and she knew Naruto would understand. Right. Good luck, Oni-san, Naruto said. Thanks, Naruto muttered. He wasn't angry at her and he hoped he didn't sound like a jerk earlier. He was caught off guard when Naruto smiled softly at him and said her goodbyes as she left with Hinata. You mean so much to her, you know. She envies you greatly, Kushina said, watching her daughter leave. Why would she envy me when she's got all the power? Naruto said and tried to bite down the self-disappointment. She told me that you're stronger than her, not physically of course but mentally. She told me that if she had the same upbringing as you did then she would have snapped a long time ago. She envies you and your inner strength. You're her role model, even before she met you, Kushina said honestly. She doesn't know what I've been through, Naruto said matter-of-factly. True, but she can guess and she looks up to you for being so strong, Kushina said. Naruto was surprised to hear that. It sounded too weird to believe. Naruto was stronger than him and she thought of him as a role model. Her statement also reminded him of his past and he frowned. I never asked for a harsh life. Kushina flinched at that. I know so Naruto, I can't even begin to tell how sorry I am, Kushina said regretfully. It doesn't matter how many times you apologize sensei, it doesn't change what I've been through, what I've endured. You can't take away 12 years of hell with just some stupid apology with stupid excuses. You left me to rot. Naruto spat the last part. He was getting angry now the more he thought about it. I know Naruto and I know it was unfair but we honestly didn't leave you alone. We trusted you to be in the care of your godparents but they ended up betraying us, Kushina said sadly. That's all you got. I've heard better. You left me in the hands of other people, when you could have taken me with you to wherever the hell you went. No letters. Nothing to tell me that you were even alive and then all of a sudden you just come back and expect me to be loving son who had dreamed of meeting his parents one day. Fat chance. Naruto said angrily. Kushina paused when she registered something specific that Naruto said and her eyes widened. Why didn't she remember it sooner? Quote. We did send you letters and presents every month for the past 12 years, Kushina said confusedly. Oh, and somehow they never got to me. Cut the crap and let's get back to training, Naruto gritted out and looked away from her. Kushina was borderline confused at this point. She and Minato had sent hundreds of letters and scrolls with presents to Konoha specifically. The letters never had their names on them but they did highlight the fact they were all from Naruto's parents, no further details on their identities so people wouldn't come after Naruto because of their anger towards Minato. They even had monthly replies from Jiraiya on Naruto's well-being and for them not to worry at all. They honestly thought they had made the right decision in trusting the two Sannin, but it was all a lie. So where did the presents go? Something was definitely amiss and Kushina had to figure out what the hell was happening around here. Hey boss, we're done, one of Naruto's bunshin said. Boss? Naruto raised an eyebrow. Right. You may leave now, Kushina cut in. They needed to continue. The three clones simultaneously popped and Naruto was hit with so much information at once that he momentarily got dizzy and lost his balance but he was caught gently. It's okay, Kushina cooed softly. She knew this would happen when the clones popped. He still wasn't used to the effects, so she continued to hold him steady until he got his wits back. Once he got his thoughts in process he quickly moved away from Kushina's hold. So, have you learned anything? Kushina asked. Quote. Yeah, Naruto said while rubbing his head in discomfort. It was quite a rush. Good. Now before I teach you a jutsu I need to first teach you tree and water walking. Are you ready? Kushina asked seriously. She would leave out the subject of the gifts and letters for now. Quote. I'm ready, Naruto said seriously. He was hoping to learn a jutsu already but after getting so much information from his clones he actually wanted to know more of what Kushina was going to teach him. From there Kushina started to teach him tree climbing and although it was a difficult start he was able to get the hang of it pretty quickly in a few hours. Water walking was a different story altogether however. Where tree walking required concentration to attach one's feet to a tree, which was a solidified and stationary object, water walking required someone to put constant and even distribution of chakra to their feet in order to stay afloat on water, which was an object in constant motion. So far Naruto was having difficulty in this exercise because he didn't know how to keep an even amount of chakra in his footing. It was very late at night now but the training was not finished yet. Again, Kushina ordered when she saw him come out of the water, after he fell inside for the 20th time. Huff, huff, huff. Right. Naruto said tiredly as he made his way back to land and started the process all over again. Remember, constant and even distribution, Kushina reminded. Naruto stood near the pond and focused as much as he could on his feet. They started to glow, he closed his eyes to focus. Kushina wasn't holding back and taking him to his very limits. She wasn't worried about exhausting him to the extent of missing missions. Team 7 would be off the next day anyway. Naruto took a few steps forward, but he started to sink almost immediately. Focus, Naruto, Kushina commanded. Naruto concentrated harder and felt his feet lift. When he looked down, he saw that his feet were actually on the surface of the water. I did it, Naruto said softly and in surprise when he noticed that he wasn't sinking. I did it, Naruto said gleefully. He felt really proud himself. Kushina had been analyzing Naruto's training since the beginning and she was surprised with many things. He had huge reserves of chakra if he could summon shadow clones, he had amazing stamina if he could last this long without succumbing to exhaustion. The more she looked at it, the more she realized that Naruto truly was a prodigy. It took Naruto days to tree and water walk while it took Naruto only a few hours. He had so much promise and she planned on capitalizing on that. So, the Jutsu Sensei, Naruto said tiredly. He was so exhausted that he was struggling to focus. You did well, Naruto, and you made me proud, but I don't think teaching you a new jutsu when you're so exhausted would be a good idea, Kushina said as she looked at his form. I'm ready, Naruto said confidently and tried his best to hide his fatigue. Well, alright, if you feel up to it. I'm going to be teaching you the Rasengan. It takes a lot of practice and you won't get it the first. Kushina stopped talking when she saw Naruto faint from exhaustion. She was just buying herself some time so he could fall asleep. She knew a lot of jutsu, and planned to teach him every one of them, but in all honesty she didn't know how to do the Rasengan properly. It would be Minato's job to teach him that. She sighed and picked him up gently. She went to Naruto's apartment and put him to bed. She tucked him in and kissed him gently on the forehead. Good night, Sochi, I love you, Kushina said softly and then left his apartment. Minato was in his bedroom, which was in the Namikaze estate, waiting for his wife to come home. Naruto had already told him that Kushina said not to wait for her because she was training Naruto, but he didn't want to sleep until he saw her. He knew he couldn't see Naruto yet. The boy had enough problems trying to adjust to his mother and he would only complicate things further. He knew he was acting like a coward, but he was focusing more on the logical aspect of the situation instead of just manning up. Were you waiting for me to come home, Minato-kun? He was so out of it that he actually jerked in surprise and saw Kushina, who was already in her nightgown. Yeah, sorry, Minato said sheepishly. Sigh, it's okay. I was actually hoping that you would be awake when I came home, Kushina said honestly. How did the day go? Minato asked. It went quite well and Naruto made a lot of progress. I'm going to start teaching him some jutsu, Kushina said. Already? Are sure that he's ready for such a step? Minato asked curiously. I'm positive. You should have seen him today, so strong and so determined. He may not like me, but you can never stop a mother from being so proud. Kami Minato, I love him so much that it hurts, knowing that I made so many mistakes and that he had to suffer for it. It's so painful to look at him and know that I can never hold him in my arms, knowing that he will never call me Ka-san. Kushina choked out as she sobbed. All those emotion coming to the surface and the mother couldn't hide them. Kushina-chan, we were both responsible, so don't be too hard on yourself. We will get through this, we'll get our son back. We will sort out this dreadful village for what they put him through. I may be Hokage, but after what they did to Naruto, I refuse to put these people first. Only my family deserves such, especially Naruto, Minato said as he wiped away his wife's tears. When will you teach him the Rasengan? Kushina asked. When the time is right, Minato said careful. When will you go to him? Kushina asked with a frown. When the two of you have sorted things out first, Minato said. But Min, I know what you're going to say, that I shouldn't wait, but hear me out first. You're his mother, you cared for him so much, and it was my idea to trust Jiraiya and Tsunade in the first place. It was my decision to separate from him, and that wasn't fair to you or the children. You deserve this, to make a connection with him, to be there for him, and I would only disrupt the bonding by being involved, Minato said sadly. Minato-kun, stop talking crap, Kushina said to the surprised Hokage. We were both involved in the decision to leave him here. You're not the only one to blame for that, and you shouldn't distance yourself just because you think you'd be doing us a favor. Naruto needs both of us, not just me. He needs to know that we're there for him no matter what. Even if he despises us, we need to show him that we love him to no end, Kushina said. Yeah, I guess so, but not yet. I still have a lot to sort out in this village, Minato said with irritation at the thought of Konoha. Okay. I discovered something important today, Kushina said. What? Minato asked. Naruto had never received anything from us, not even a letter, Kushina said. Quote. How is that possible? Jiraiya told us. Jiraiya was never here when we left, remember? All of his letters on Naruto's upbringing was a lie, Kushina said. Right. I forgot about that. No wonder Naruto's mad at us, after not getting any word from us until we came back here. That's just so horrible, we were so careless, Minato said looking down. Find him, find both of them, Kushina said seriously. What? Minato asked confusedly. Find Jiraiya and Tsunade. I can't stand this anymore. Those two have a lot to answer for before I kill them, Kushina said with a scowl. Try not to kill them too quickly, Minato said. No promises, Kushina said seriously. Her eyes shot wide open as she landed with a light splash and a dull thud. The sensation of falling for an eternity was still very fresh. She quickly got to her feet, which was a bit difficult because of the initial shock. She realized that she was soaked, and when she looked down she saw water that rose above her feet. She quickly took in her surroundings and realized that she was in a narrow passage with pipes, resembling a sewer of some sorts. Rumbling, she thought she was actually hearing things until the sound came again. It sounded like a distant earthquake, stopping just for a few seconds and then continuing. The ground shook with tremor effort as the rumbling continued. She didn't know what to make of the situation, but she was very curious to know what the hell was going on. Where was she? What was causing that noise? It seemed that she had to venture closer to the source in order to get answers. She looked around. Pipes, pipes, and more pipes, on the ceiling and walls. How the hell did she end up here? Did someone just dump her? And if so, then for what reason? The water she was walking through seemed to be knee-high now, and she couldn't shake off the sense of foreboding as the rumbling increased in accordance to her distance, or lack of. She was getting closer now, and it seemed that her heart had picked the worst moment to start hammering in her chest. She was nervous, scared even. Something wasn't right about all of this, and she had a feeling she wouldn't want to know what the matter was. She saw, in the distance, that the narrow passage was beginning to stretch out, and as she approached she could see the faint outline of a room, and that made her curiosity turn to worry. Nonetheless, she persisted without pause. When she made it into the room, she was treated to a very large cage. Even as she looked up, she could see no ceiling. Her head whipped in the direction of the rumbling, so, it was coming from in there. It was actually really loud now, and it shook the entire room, albeit only slightly. Just as suddenly the rumbling stopped and she froze in place. If she didn't know any better, she could have sworn that the rumbling was actually someone, or something, breathing. Something was in there. She wasn't certain, but her instincts were telling her otherwise. Something was in there, and she was sure it was aware of her presence as well. She shivered at the sound. Something was definitely in there. Whatever it was seemed silent, as if assessing her in some way, her fears increasing tenfold. But what happened next threw her into complete bewilderment. Your father is a fool. She shot out of her bed. Her breath in short bursts, gasping for air. eyes wide open on the prospect that if she dared to even close them, then that would mean the end of her. She took in her surroundings quickly, and her tense body relaxed when she noticed that she was in her room. What was that? Naruko whispered to herself in worry and fear. That was the most vivid dream she had ever experienced, so much detail, and she was completely aware of everything around her. That had never happened to her before, and she was actually scared. Calm down, it was just a dream. She scolded herself for getting so emotional. It wasn't as if that dream could harm her. It wasn't real, right? She hoped that she didn't wake Narumi from her sleep. It didn't matter how many rooms this place had, Narumi refused to be separated from her. Naruko felt warm at that. Narumi was like the naive, loving, bright, little girl that anyone would love. Naruko was pretty sure that even enemy shinobi couldn't harm Narumi. She was just too adorable for her own good. She took a glance at Narumi's bed and her eyes widened in shock. Narumi wasn't on the bed, she was gone. Ka-san. Tu-san. Naruko screamed. It didn't take long for both parents to rush into the girl's room in alarm. Naruko, what's wrong? Kushina asked in worry when she saw her distraught daughter. Narumi's gone, Naruko said frantically. Both parents were shocked, but it was Minato who first acted. Search anywhere you can. I'll use my Hiraishin to look for her, Minato said seriously. He did not want another child to suffer. He would not allow it. He disappeared from them in a yellow flash. Kushina was already making for the door, not caring that she was wearing pajamas. One of her children needed her, and whoever was involved in taking Narumi shall meet a swift death at her hands. Once she found her daughter, she would request for Aki to stay in the Namikaze estate permanently. In truth, Aki wasn't even from Konoha. She only had arrived a few weeks ago, so Kushina could not fault her in Naruto's suffering. That didn't mean she didn't take precautionary measures to ensure that Aki would not harm Narumi. Kasan. Naruko rushed to catch up to her irate mother. Naruko, stay here. She was all mother now, and she was falling into her protective instincts. I think I know where Narumi is, Naruko squeaked out. Her mother could be very scary at times, but she needed to voice out her opinion. She had her suspicions, for a long time, where Narumi would disappear to, and she hoped that she was correct. Where? Kushina decided to listen. She would take anything she got. Naruko and Kushina raced to Naruto's apartment. It was early into the morning and not many people were outside, but the pair were not focusing on that. They didn't even care if any of these people never saw the light of day again, except for a select few. Kushina prayed that Narumi was at the apartment, but she was a bit wary on what might be happening there. They entered the building and approached Naruto's door hesitantly, both for different reasons. Naruko gulped and then knocked softly. There was no reply whatsoever. Do you think he knows it's us? Naruko asked timidly. I don't think that's it. I think he must be sleeping, Kushina said thoughtfully. It would make sense. She had been training him to exhaustion for the past week. Adding to the fact that they still had D-rank missions, then it was easily comprehensible that he must be sleeping. Do you think we should go inside? I don't want him to get angry at us. She was nervous. Kushina understood that, but if there was something happening in this place, then they needed to investigate. We have to Masumi. We need to make sure that there isn't anything wrong. Plus, Narumi is still missing, so we have to act quickly. With that said, she opened the door and looked around. Not a single soul was in the living room. They made their way to Naruto's bedroom and were met with a startling sight. Naruto was still sleeping, snoring loudly to the world, but he wasn't alone. Narumi was on his bed, using his chest as a pillow as she slept soundly. Kushina couldn't stop the tears as she stared at the scene in front of her. It was heartwarming that Narumi was also doing her best to be with her brother, and it was another slap to her face for all the mistakes she made that drifted Naruto apart from them. It wasn't fair to the girls. They obviously loved him, but since Naruto had a dislike for the Namikazes, then he wouldn't return their feelings. She wanted to die. Don't worry, Ka-san, he'll come around. Just don't give up. It will take time, years perhaps, but please don't give up on him, Naruko said comfortingly as she took hold of her mother's hand. I would never, Kushina said with a small bittersweet smile. She didn't have that kind of right, she had to make up for her failures. He was her child, her blood, her Sochi, she would never give up on him, never. Should we leave her here? Naruko asked suddenly. Kushina looked at Naruko for a moment. She was actually considering her daughter's silent request, but they were all stopped from their musings by a yellow flash. Oh wow, she was here all along. How did she even get here? She's 3 years old. Minato kept his voice at a whisper. It was truly a shocking sight to see his daughter and son sleeping on the same bed. You know she has a knack for running out of the house, ever since we got here anyway, Kushina said evenly. Oh, yeah, Minato said dumbly. How did you get here so quickly? Kushina asked Minato suspiciously. I hid some of my kunai in the living room and I was able to use them to get here quick enough. He just knew he upset Kushina with what he said. He knew the reason, of course. It was a breach of trust, Naruto's trust, however small it was. Remove every kunai in this place, Kushina whispered with an edge. She was furious with Minato for this blatant act and disregard for Naruto's privacy. Then how can I come to his aid quickly? Minato countered. Ka-san, Tu-san, we have to go. He could wake at any moment, Naruko said while eyeing her brother's prone form nervously. You will remove them when he is out, Kushina replied, although it seemed more of an order, as she made her way to the bed and carefully took her daughter from her sleeping position. Narumi whimpered softly in protest and Kushina had to resist the urge to sigh. Even in her sleep, Narumi still wanted to be close to Naruto. Alright, but I'll leave the ones just outside his apartment, Minato said in resignation. Kushina did not protest to that, as long as it wasn't against Naruto's privacy then it was fine with her. They all came together and then disappeared in another yellow flash. It was about an hour later when Kushina and Minato were conversing in his office. Any luck in finding them? Kushina asked impatiently. Well, Jiraiya was quite easy to find, using the spy network. Tsunade, however, is a whole different story. She's disappeared, none of the Anbu could report anything and I doubt we will be able to locate her so easily, Minato said with a frown. Right, when will Jiraiya be here? Kushina asked, deciding to focus on an easier target. The message from my Anbu came a few days ago, detailing the estimated time of arrival with Jiraiya. Today is the day, Minato said indifferently. I see. There was nothing else she could say on the subject, things were already in motion and they would soon be seeing that bastard of a godfather anytime now. Kushina-chan. Kushina was cut from her thoughts when Minato called to her in worry. Yes, Minato-kun, Kushina responded. I know you're furious, I am too, but we have to hear him out before anything else, okay? Minato said carefully. Let me make one thing clear, Minato-kun. It doesn't matter what excuse he gives us. He will still get the beating of his life, but I'll hear him out before I tear him apart, Kushina replied mirthlessly. That's good enough for me, Minato said. For a moment I thought you would try to put your former sensei in a good light, Kushina said, raising an eyebrow in a questioning manner. My true family comes first. It is my duty as a father and a husband to put my family first, Minato said seriously. And here I actually thought you'd put Hokage first, Kushina replied with a small smile. Minato scoffed, she had to be joking. Put these people before his own family. These despicable villagers. Minato did not find that thought amusing whatsoever. However, all those thoughts did remind him of one thing. That reminds me, I've got a special announcement for my beloved villagers tomorrow, Minato said with a glint in his eye. Kushina only raised an eyebrow. She was very interested in that, but decided to not pry. I just wonder how long we have to wait for your Anbu, Kushina said in annoyance. She was not a patient woman and she wanted justice now. Minato was about to reply, but he was stopped by a poof of smoke. He and Kushina both looked to the figure crouched in front of them. Hokage-sama, we have arrived as estimated from our retrieval mission of Jiraiya of the Sannin. The Anbu bowed lower in loyalty and respect. Where is he? Kushina immediately asked. In the waiting room, along with my subordinates. The agent knew not to mess with a woman scorned, and he did not want to end up in the crossfire of an angry mother. All right, send him in. Jiraiya was in a bit of a situation. One moment he was utilizing information on a possible uprising in another village, when suddenly he was surrounded by Konoha Anbu. Now that in itself was nothing to be alarmed of since they were his allies, but when they told him that, as per the Hokage's request, he needed to return to Konoha, effective immediately, that's when he felt something was wrong. He had tried to pry information out of his escorts, but they denied him anything other than, all will be explained by the Hokage himself. Nothing more was said. He had wondered what on earth would Sarutobi need him for, especially using his best tracking Anbu agents to locate him. It was frustrating, he was on a mission and he didn't need Sarutobi interfering. Oh well, he was back in Konoha now, not that he cared that much, but he did want to get this meeting over and done with as soon as possible. He would have easily went into Sarutobi's office uninvited, like he always did, but these agents weren't giving him space to do so. In fact, they were very adamant in making sure he didn't move an inch. Jiraiya-sama, the Hokage will see you now, the secretary said respectfully. She was lucky that Minato had let her keep this job. She had begged and pleaded, promising to accept any punishment, any suffering, to keep her job. It was mostly because of the guilt that she felt for Naruto. She didn't know him well enough, but she was involved in his suffering a number of times, under the illusion that he was the Kyuubi. She didn't know of any way she could make up for her crimes other than punishment from the parents themselves, so she waited until that fateful day came. Thanks, I wouldn't mind getting together later, Jiraiya said with a flirtatious grin. Please make haste, Jiraiya-sama. The secretary knew all about Jiraiya's tendencies and she wasn't in the least interested. Sure. Jiraiya waved it off. Maybe he'll stop for some research before he left the village again. He couldn't help the nagging feeling of impending doom coming forth, even though he knew full well that he wasn't in any possible danger here. Who would be stupid enough to attack one of the three legendary Sannin? He approached the Hokage's office and alarm bells were starting to go off. What the hell was wrong with him? Did he eat some bad sushi or something? He decided to ignore his on and off instincts and made his way into the Hokage's office. Sarutobi, what is the meaning? He cut off his rant when he realized that it wasn't Sarutobi sitting at the usual desk, but Minato. Ah, sensei, I hope your trip back to Konoha was a peaceful one, Minato said in false happiness. Jiraiya was truly shocked to the core. Minato was back in Konoha. Since when? Had it been 12 years already? His brain struggled to think of any coherent thoughts. Well, I apologize for inviting you here so suddenly. I just needed your report in Naruto's progress. Can he perform the Rasengan? Did you teach him any useful jutsu? Is he the prodigy that you always boasted about before his birth? Take your time, sensei. The statement was gentle, but the air was thick with tension, hardly breathable. Jiraiya's mind was still trying to sort itself out. The fact that Minato was here was a surprise. The more pressing matter would be the fact that he immediately wanted his opinion on Naruto's progress as a shinobi. He had to be honest with himself, he had no idea how to answer the onslaught of questions. He remembered that fateful day. Tsunade had left suddenly, so suddenly that he couldn't find a reason to the sudden departure. It could have been because Konoha reminded her of Dan, but if that was the case then she would have left years prior to the Kyuubi attack. So he was left with the baby, and to be honest he couldn't be there all the time for the child, he had a spy network to run. He looked after Naruto, secretly of course, for only a week before giving him to an orphanage and putting the child's responsibility into the Hokage's hands. He figured it would be good for the child in the end. Minato had grown up in an orphanage, going into the academy, and then finally came to be his student. He turned out to be one of the greatest Hokages that had ever lived. He figured if Naruto had the same upbringing, then he would turn out just like his father. He had planned to come and teach the kid when he reached 12 years of age, but due to his spy network he had forgotten about it, and only now did he realize that he had to know information on Naruto since he wrote it in the letters. He whirled around when he heard the door close and saw Kushina herself, looking at him with a small smile, which was anything but welcoming. "Hello Jiraiya, so how has our son been doing? With all the letters you sent us, then I'm sure you and Tsunade made him a great prodigy," Kushina said evenly, but her body shook only slightly. Jiraiya felt like a fish out of water, struggling to breathe and get his bearings. He knew he was in dangerous territory, so he decided to pry for information first before he would answer their questions. "Hey Kushina, Minato, when did you guys get back?" He had to put up a smile to try and diffuse the tension, but it seemed to only fuel the sense of dread. Not long ago. We wanted to see you, but you weren't here. So I deduced that you were somewhere involved in your spy network. Luckily my Anbu found you easily," Minato said evenly. He wasn't going to give too much information yet. "So why weren't you with Naruto?" Kushina asked. Jiraiya was starting to sweat. This was definitely not a warm welcome. "I was busy with the spy network Kushina-chan," Jiraiya said carefully. "Oh, how were you able to check on Naruto then?" Minato asked. "Well, he paused when he realized something they knew already. "Yes," Kushina prompted. Enough of this. Did you look after our son or not?" Kushina said strongly. The game was up and she wanted answers. "Well, I kind of let the village look after him. Make him into a responsible person before I came back to train him personally." "Something similar to your life, Minato," Jiraiya said. "And Tsunade?" Minato asked calmly as he saw Kushina struggling to stop herself from lashing out. "Left after you did, never seen her since. Now I know that I promised to look after the kid, but I thought it would be better this way. He would grow up strong just like you, Minato, and then I would come and teach him everything I know. Besides, this village would be more than enough to help him grow." Jiraiya said easily. It was for Naruto's own good. Minato could understand that. "Go ahead Kushina-chan." The moment Minato said those words was the moment when a powerful fist made contact with Jiraiya's face, which sent him flying out of the tower and crashing to the ground. Jiraiya was a bit dazed. That was the epitome of a sucker punch. He never saw it coming at all. He could barely make out the redhead that was coming to him. Kushina was letting all her anger out as she made her way to that despicable man. Once she was in range, she went on the man's stomach and proceeded to beat the living hell out of Jiraiya, all the while letting all her thoughts and emotions out. "You bastard! You sorry excuse of a man! How could you? How could you betray us? Stab us in the back? Do you have any idea what we're going through?" Naruto suffered. He almost died countless times, for 12 years, because of this village. "My Sochi hates me. He hates me." She couldn't stop herself as she continued to let out all her frustration and fury on Jiraiya's face. Hot tears of regret and sorrow stung her eyes and her vision was blurred. When she felt someone force her away from Jiraiya, she wanted to punch them until she realized it was Minato, calling to her. "Calm down, love. Calm down," Minato implored as he held Kushina tightly. Kushina buried her face in Minato's shoulder and cried with heart-wrenching sobs. It was too much for her. Minato waited until she was feeling better before he let go of her and made his way to his sensei, who was battered from Kushina's attack. He grabbed a hold of Jiraiya's shirt and yanked the old man to his feet. He created a Rasengan and carelessly observed it while he addressed Jiraiya. "All the letters you sent to us were lies. Do you know how Naruto suffered? Even the beating Kushina had given you couldn't compare to all those reports. Nothing short of killing you could make up for your betrayal," Minato said indifferently. Jiraiya didn't even protest. He had no idea that Naruto had it that badly. He knew that the villagers were still angered by the Kyuubi attack, but he didn't think they would have made Naruto suffer so much. He didn't fight back when Kushina beat him to a bloody pulp. After hearing the reason, he didn't think he deserved to retort. He was in pain but stayed strong and tried to make amends for his mistake. Minato, I didn't know. Of course you didn't. None of us did. You abandoned him to a life of hell, and something like that is unforgivable. You will tell me where I can find Tsunade after you wake up, Minato said seriously. I'm sorry, Jiraiya said remorsefully. Me too, sensei, Minato said seriously, then thrust the Rasengan to Jiraiya, making him hit a building and knocking him out instantly, the pain from all the broken bones and inner damage too much to bear. Sigh. You, Minato pointed at one of the villagers, from the gathered crowd, and spoke, take him to the hospital and tell the nurses to treat him until he is stable, nothing more. No special treatment or they will be punished, understood? Minato ordered, and the stunned villager did as ordered, albeit with a lot of help. Don't worry, I can't and won't hurt my loyal villagers. Everyone in the vicinity shivered at what Minato said. The statement had an undertone of malice. They never feared for their lives any more than now. I have a special announcement tomorrow. Tell everyone to be at the tower at noon, Minato said, and then led his distraught wife away from the scene. Where is Kushina-sensei? Sakura asked curiously. She decided that I would be best suited for your D-rank missions today. Kakashi gave an eye smile at the group. Yana man. D-rank missions again, Naruto said a bit tiredly. The training he was subject to was really intense and demanding. Kushina showed him absolutely no mercy when it came to ninjutsu and taijutsu, always highlighting the fact that these two types of jutsu will be very important to his development in the future. His taijutsu was gradually improving. It had to, with the way Kushina always beat him. She could hit really hard. Her only excuse was that everything she did was because of her love for him. He didn't know how to feel about that. His ninjutsu still sucked, but he was starting with a simple wind type jutsu. He had to admit that Kushina did make a good sensei. She was teaching him honestly and not trying to sabotage him in any way, which he, to a minuscule amount, appreciated. He kept his feelings in check when it came to thinking of her as his mother. He didn't want to think about that. It was getting difficult to sort out his emotions. He knew he didn't hate his mother. He didn't know if there was anything else after that. Don't worry, Ni-san. Let's just get through this together, Naruto reassured. Stupid Dobi. Do you think complaining all the time will make those D-rank missions disappear? Sasuke stared at Naruto incredulously, as incredulous as an emo could get. TCH, whatever Tem, Naruto said offhandedly. He didn't like this at all. He was so tired of the same mundane routine over and over again. He had enough. Bang. I've had enough of these D-rank mission, you hear me? Naruto screamed at the Hokage. Naruto, show some respect, Kakashi scolded. Minato was a bit surprised with his son's outburst. Team 7 had come here for their standard D-rank missions, but it seemed they had grown tired of it. Come on. These missions are pointless, we can do better than this. Naruto said irritably. Naruto, Kakashi was cut off with a stern look from Minato. I see, are you sure you're ready for something different, Naruto? He knew it was a stupid question, but he had to ask. Of course I am, Naruto replied hotly. He didn't like the fact that he had to request a mission from his father, but he had no choice. All right. They all looked at him shocked, but it didn't matter. I've got the perfect C-rank mission for all of you. He looked at his secretary, who was busy sorting papers. He didn't trust her one bit, but Kushina had agreed to let her keep her job and see what happens from there. You will go and call him in now. Hi Hokage-sama. The secretary bowed meekly and hurried to her duty. She would do anything and everything to make up to the Namikaze family for her acts. This was at least a small start. It took a while, but when the door opened again, an old man walked in, looking slightly tipsy for the time of day. This is Tazuna, your escort mission. Tazuna, These are your escorts, Minato said accordingly. Huh, are you serious? You're giving me a bunch of brats as my escorts? Who you calling a brat, old man? Naruto retorted. Quote. I mean, just look at them, Tazuna said as he eyed the kids. You should not fear Tazuna. These children are very capable. They were taught by quite qualified jonin, Minato said calmly. Quote. It doesn't change the fact that they're just brats, Tazuna said after a pause. Do not underestimate them. Alright everyone, go pack supplies for the trip. You'll have 2 hours before you meet up with Tazuna by the gates, Minato said. See you around or whatever, Tazuna said boredly, then left the office. I'd like to speak with you, Naruto, Minato said when he noticed everyone leaving. Naruto stopped, but he didn't turn to him. What's up with everyone wanting to speak with the Dobi in private? Sasuke whispered to Naruto, but she ignored him as they left the office. Quote. Well, could you turn around, Naruto? Minato asked. Naruto turned to the Hokage and looked at him with an unreadable expression. How goes your training with your mother? Minato asked carefully. Quote. It's well, Hokage-sama. Kushina-sensei has taught me the basics, Naruto said emotionlessly, but he did make a point to emphasize their names. He didn't want his father getting too comfortable around him. The man had no right to feel content after abandoning him. Minato had to refrain himself from flinching at Naruto's cold tone. Kushina had told him that Naruto had never called her Ka-san, and Minato knew how that affected her. She can put on a strong front, but Minato knew it was tearing her apart. That's good to hear. I heard that she's even teaching you some jutsu to add to your arsenal. Minato was trying his best to get a glimpse of what Naruto felt towards him, but Naruto's expression gave nothing away. Only wind-based techniques. Is there a reason I'm here, Hokage-sama? I still have to pack for the mission, Naruto said evenly. Actually yes, I want to offer you something. It is your birthright, and as your father, Minato finally got a reaction as soon as he said the last part, anger, it is my duty to teach you the Rasengan. It's my very own special tech. I refuse. Quote. What? Minato was stupefied. He thought Naruto would at least be interested in the prospect of learning something from him. He was Hokage. TCH, how dare you? After everything that's happened to me, you still have the audacity to act oblivious to it all. Naruto struggled not to shout. No, son, don't call me that. You are not my father. Kushina-sensei is not my mother. How can you even call yourselves such? How can you still think of yourselves as my parents when you left me in hell? Naruto asked incredulously. It was truly weird for him, and it only made him angrier. He was still conflicted on his feelings towards Kushina, but he certainly did not like Minato at all. Minato looked down. The truth really hurt, but that's what he gets for leaving Naruto with people who betrayed him. I'm sore. No, I don't want your apology. Sometimes sorry just doesn't cut it. Naruto said coldly. Minato still didn't want to lose Naruto as a son. He loved him, and it was really hard for him to deal with this whole mess, especially with the truth of what happened to Naruto for 12 years being repeatedly shoved in his face. He realized that he never actually made a conscious effort to be there for Naruto, and that hurt more than anything. The guilt he was feeling was indescribable. No matter what he did, he would always be looked at as a horrible father, not by the villagers, but anyone else. This wasn't about some sort of disgusting pride that came with being a parent. He loved Naruto, plain and simple, and this was as bad for him as it was for his son. I've wasted enough time here. Good day, Hokage-sama, Naruto said as he made to leave. I'm so sorry, Sochi. I know it isn't enough, and I know that we don't deserve your forgiveness, but please give us a chance to fix our mistakes. We failed you as parents, we know that. We are terrible parents, not a day goes by where I don't agree. We're just so regretful of what happened, Sochi, and we'll do anything to make it up to you. We love you, Minato pleaded his case. It didn't mean much, but he needed to let Naruto know that they were really sorry. Love. Well, you sure have a way of showing me how much you love me when you left me with a bunch of strangers and took Naruto with you. Naruto said critically. Minato had to admit, the way Naruto had said that made it seem 10 times worse. He could tell that Naruto thought they chose favorites that night. No, that was far from it. We didn't take Naruto because we loved her more than you. We took her because we were running out of time. We love you both equally. It was hard decision for me and your mother, Minato said. It was most difficult for Kushina of all. She refused to leave Naruto and it took Jiraiya, Tsunade and himself to convince her that it was the only way. She did concede in the end, but she always had her doubts. That's why she was taking it so hard. She felt like she failed Naruto in the worst way possible, which was unfortunately true. Minato could tell that Kushina was an emotional wreck. The mother was always trying to figure out ways she could make up to her son, whether it was with training or quality time. Minato had to admit, he had never seen Kushina like this before. He had never seen her fall into such deep desperation. She was desperate for anything with Naruto. What the hell? Hard decision. Why the hell did you have to choose anyone? Naruto screamed angrily. Oh, that's right, he didn't know about the Kyuubi attack, Minato realized. I guess I'll have to tell you. It's the least I can do for you, Minato said as he brushed his hair with his hand. Naruto looked at the Hokage wearily. Like I have the time to hear your excuses. I have to go on a mission. Naruto slammed the door shut. Well, I could have handled that better, Minato muttered. Naruto was waiting by the gate. He was packed and ready to go. The only to wait for now would be for the rest to show up. His parents just couldn't give him a break. It was not something he liked. It's as if all they could do annoy him to no end. At least his mother Kushina-sensei respected his space and did not force herself on him unless it was necessary. He could admit that he could see on a number of occasions the inner turmoil that Kushina was going through, and that really scared him. Great, you're here, Tazuna muttered as he made his way to the gate. He did not like this, even if it was supposed to happen. Taking kids with them was very dangerous. Naruto folded his arms and stared ahead of him. He had way too many problems than to deal with a drunk. Not long after that, the other genin joined the duo at the gate. It was a normal affair with Sasuke trying and failing, on many occasions, to sway Naruto to the Uchiha image. They were all waiting impatiently for their Jonin senseis. After some time their wait was over. Good morning everyone, Kushina greeted with a forced smile. She was still a bit distraught after dealing with Jiraiya. His very name just filled her with so much rage. She was furious at his neglecting of her child. His suffering was far from finished, however she had her children to think about. Minato had refused to involve her in this mission at first, but she would hear none of it. This would be the first mission her children would be away from Konoha. She had to put up a strong front, no need to worry everyone around her. Where's Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked confusedly. Yeah, I would have thought that we were going with him alone, Naruto said. He didn't mean to say it like that, Kushina reassured herself. He may not like her as a parent, but he was still giving her some chance to be around him. It wasn't much, but she was willing to take anything she could. Yo, Kakashi greeted from atop a tree. How long have you been there? Sasuke asked. Since Naruto came here, Kakashi said with an eye smile. Naruto frowned at that. He did not detect any trace of Kakashi. Which meant that he still needed a lot of work if he was ever going to become Hokage. Team 7 took the response in stride. They all began their journey to Wave Country. It was uneventful for the most part, but the rookies were making do with what they had. Hey, Sasuke-kun, Sakura started. Sasuke just looked at her expectantly. Will you like me more if I became stronger? Sakura asked tentatively. I'd like you more if you just leave me alone, Sasuke dismissed without a second thought. Sakura's shoulders sagged. You shouldn't have to go to such lengths to impress someone you like, Naruto said indifferently. What do you know? Sakura fumed. For starters, you're a kunoichi, and the one main objective is to become great at what you do. Love will follow soon enough, but to have little regard for your profession when it could lead to your death and to focus on trivial matters is not how a kunoichi betters herself, Kushina cut. She was getting a little irritated with their constant squabbles. You know Naruto-chan, I have a lot to offer. I'm quite the package, Sasuke boasted. Kami, what is wrong with you? Are they always like that? Tazuna raised an eyebrow at the other two adults. It's pretty much expected at this point, Kakashi supported. You sure know how to pick 'em, Tazuna said sarcastically. We do, don't we? Kakashi said. The journey continued on and the group had to battle the demon brothers on their way to Wave Country. It was relatively easy for the two Jonin senseis to completely overpower the brothers. They interrogated them and in the end found out the real reason for Tazuna's need for them. The mission had suddenly become more dangerous. Kushina wanted to end it right there, but she was overruled by her genin, and she relented in the end. What's a mother do too? They were being a lot more careful since the discovery of the real reason behind the mission, but even that could not help against the unexpected. Once we arrive at Wave, I want full details on what exactly is happening around there. No secrets, you hear me? Kushina said seriously. Yeah, Tazuna could admit it now. Kushina was a very intimidating woman when she wanted to be. Naruto was staring ahead of him when he caught the sight of something near some bushes. He quickly threw a kunai, making the entire group alert and ready for battle. After some tense seconds, a white rabbit jumped out of the bushes and hopped like an animal possessed, away from the group. It was just a rabbit. You really are a loser, Sasuke scoffed at Naruto. Naruto scowled and was about to defend her brother, but she was cut off with one command. Everyone get down. Kushina screamed and no sooner did she say that a huge sword sliced through the air, narrowly missing the group's heads. Damn it. A man with bandages covering the lower half of his face emerged from the bushes. Kakashi and Kushina regarded the man wearily, but it was Kakashi who concluded the man's identity. Zabuza Momochi, Kakashi said seriously. Kakashi Hatake, Konoha's copy ninja. I don't know you though, Zabuza said as he eyed the red-headed woman. Then it's best that it's kept that way, Kushina said. She at least had a few advantages to this situation. Kakashi knew Zabuza, she hoped enough, and the enemy didn't know her. Zabuza shrugged and then inclined his head to his sword. Excuse me while I take my blade from that tree. I don't think so, Kushina said curtly. How else am I supposed to kill that old man? Zabuza said as he pointed at Tazuna. You won't be killing anyone on our watch, Zabuza, Kakashi said. You're mistaken, Hatake. I came here to kill the bridge builder. If I have to go through you all, then that's exactly what I'm going to do, Zabuza said seriously. Kids, get out of here, Kushina commanded. No way. This is my first mission and you want us to run away? Hell no, Naruto shouted angrily. This is no time for that. I'm ordering you to leave now, Kushina said with finality. I have to admit, that kid can make a great distraction, Zabuza said nonchalantly as he pried his sword from the tree it was lodged in. Damn it, Kushina cursed under her breath for being so careless to get distracted. Well, since you won't get out of my way, then I got no choice, lady. Zabuza summoned 2 water clones. I have to kill you all. 2 of Zabuza's clones went for Kakashi and Kushina respectively, while the real Zabuza went after Tazuna himself. Nothing personal, old man. That's just how life is, I guess, Zabuza said as he readied his finishing blow. He was stopped, however, by rock hitting the back of his head. He looked to who threw the rock and saw an irate blonde boy looking at him furiously. You're not harming him on my watch, Naruto shouted. Ni-san, we have to get out of here, Naruto said nervously. Hell no, I didn't become a shinobi to just run away from battle. I can beat him by myself. Naruto said as he charged at the missing nin. Stupid Dobi's gonna get himself killed. Sasuke said, and he surprised his teammates by rushing after Naruto. Naruto soon followed suit and all three were heading for Zabuza. Sakura was too scared to do any of that. All she could do was look around and try to figure out a way to help if possible. I'm warning you kids. Stay out of my way and you'll live to tell the tale, Zabuza said while narrowing his eyes at the genin. Naruto went for a punch, but Zabuza just swatted his hand away and kneed the blonde in the stomach, causing him to double over in pain. Naruto tried using her speed to get a surprise attack on the missing nin, however Zabuza intercepted and threw the girl to some nearby trees, which she hit rather harshly. Sasuke tried to create a fire jutsu, but Zabuza was faster and created a water jutsu that swept the Uchiha prodigy away. Zabuza returned his gaze to the blonde knucklehead. He felt for the kid, but he had a job to do and these kids didn't heed the warning of a criminal. He took a small container and poured a little of its contents on his sword and then put the container away again. I warned you to stay out of my way. Now you had to force my hand. Maybe killing you will make a point to your comrades, Zabuza said as he raised his sword into the air. Naruto lay on his side, clutching his stomach. Zabuza really hurt him, and now Naruto knew how powerful a shinobi Zabuza might be. He couldn't move. The pain was too much for his body and all he could do was wheeze as Zabuza stood over him. It's unfortunate that you have to die so young, but so is the life of a shinobi. The poison will make it more enjoyable for me, so you won't suffer too long. What can I say? I'm a nice guy. Zabuza brought the sword down to finish the blonde. Ni-san. Naruto cried out when she finally regained consciousness, but she was too far to move and save her brother from the impending attack. Naruto closed his eyes and prepared for death's embrace. It seemed like his life was unfair to the very end. Abandoned by his parents. Attacked by so many villagers. Finding out that he had parents when he spent most of his life thinking that they died or left him to rot and be forgotten. Well, the last one was partly true. Now, he was about to meet his end in the worst way possible. He wasn't going to die as a hero, but as a nobody who had a shit of a life. Memories of his harsh childhood flashed in his head and he couldn't stop his heart clenching at the images. His life was truly miserable till his death. He heard a squelch, indicating that Zabuza's blade had most probably sliced something. But he didn't feel any pain. He felt some droplets of something fall on his face and slowly opened his eyes. As soon as he had a good look at what happened, his eyes shot wide open. Kushina was over him. The blade on her shoulder was unbearably painful and she flinched when she felt the harsh metal sink into her flesh. Zabuza was quite shocked to see the red-headed woman recklessly risk her life without pause. She left his clone and immediately put her body on the line for the blonde child. Kakashi used that opportunity to destroy the water clones and attack Zabuza quickly. The missing nin quickly dislodged his blade from Kushina's shoulder and focused on the copy nin. Kushina breathing was slightly haggard. She could feel the poison slowly making its way through her system and her body was starting to feel numb. The pain on her shoulder intensified and she put a hand on the wound to try and stop the blood flow. She could do little else, her limbs were refusing to follow her commands. Even so, she did her best to put up a strong front. Hey, she softly whispered to Naruto. Naruto was looking at her in shock. It hadn't quite registered to him what exactly happened. All he did was stare, stone-faced. Are you okay, Naruto? Kushina asked in concern. That snapped him out of his stupor. He looked at Kushina and analyzed her shoulder carefully. There was a nasty cut and he mentally winced. It must have been really painful. Kakashi was still dealing Zabuza. After a while he finally had the upper hand with the assistance of Naruto and Sasuke. But before they could finish Zabuza they were all interrupted by a hunter nin who claimed to be after Zabuza Mamashi. They let the nin take him and immediately turned their attention back to the kneeling woman and her son. Kushina sighed in relief when she saw Zabuza taken by the hunter nin. She doubted that she could have been of any assistance. Her body was starting to feel like lead. Ka-san, Naruko called softly as she made her way to her mother. All be fine. Kushina dropped next to her son with a dull thud. Ka-san. That was the last thing Kushina heard before her world turned black. They were able to make it to Tazuna's home in record time. Kakashi took Kushina all the way. When they arrived, Kushina was treated and put to bed. Tsunami made sure to look after the woman in her time of need, but there was little she could do for Kushina. How is she? Kakashi asked as he made his way into the room Kushina was using. She isn't good. She has a high fever and her breathing is short and labored. I'm not a medical ninja, so I'm not sure how to deal with the poison. With the limited resources we have here in Wave, I doubt we could get a cure in time. I'll need to contact someone to possibly treat her, but with Wave on edge I can't be sure if we can find anyone that will be willing to help, Tsunami said as she eyed Kushina's prone form. Just great. Kakashi knew that things were bad, but he needed to find a way to help Kushina before it was too late. He looked at Kushina. Her face looked very much troubled, even in her state of unconsciousness. I will go see a contact to help her tomorrow, Tsunami said after a pause. I'll come with you for protection, Kakashi offered. That would be lovely, Kakashi-san, Tsunami said with a smile. Kakashi went out of the room and saw Naruko. Is she okay? Naruko asked worriedly. Don't worry. We'll do everything we can, Kakashi told the girl. The worried frown did not leave the young Namikaze's face, but she nodded her head. Where is everyone else? Kakashi asked curiously. They're outside, Naruko said. Doing what? Kakashi asked with a raised eyebrow. Tree walking, Naruko shrugged and then her shoulders sagged. I really hope she'll get better. Don't lose that hope, Kakashi said with an eye smile and passed the girl. Naruko lingered a while longer by her mother's room and then decided to follow Kakashi. Kakashi walked to the backyard of the house and saw a glimpse of the child named Inari, hiding in some bushes as Sakura and Sasuke continued their training. He ignored the kid and focused on his students. Ever since Kushina forced him to train his genin, Kakashi was glad that he took her words to heart. They may have had their differences, but his students were slowly starting to take their training seriously. But there was still one genin missing. Where's Naruto? Kakashi asked. Sakura briefly stopped her exercise and looked at her sensei. He went into the forest. Don't know exactly where. Sakura shrugged her shoulders and then continued her tree walking exercise. Kakashi sighed when he heard that. Naruto had been completely quiet after Zabuza's attack and he would briefly look at his unconscious mother before looking away in, what Kakashi had to guess, complete bewilderment. Kakashi-san. Tsunami called from the door to the backyard. Kakashi looked back at the woman and saw her worried frown. This was not good. Meanwhile Naruto was going aimlessly around the woods in deep thought. Kushina saved his life. The thought was still shocking. It felt strange. It felt warm to know that someone would put their life on the line for his own. He never expected anything like this given his childhood. No one would ever protect the demon brat, so for Kushina to do it made it very difficult for him to find fault in her actions. His mind was a tirade of emotions, happiness, comfort, disgust, loathing. Why did she have to do that? Why did she have to make it so hard for him to keep loathing her presence? Why was it always so difficult for him in particular? He let out an angry sigh. He was worried about her. He couldn't fight off the feeling. The thought of her dying, because she saved him, was a very uncomfortable prospect. To top it off, he was ordered to flee, and he disobeyed out of anger and frustration of being pushed around by his mother and the possibility that he would never partake in a dangerous mission. He endangered all his comrades and he felt bad that Kushina had to be the casualty for his mistakes. A part of him found some sort of sick glee in seeing the all-so-powerful Namikaze put down a peg. Let her feel pain. Let her suffer in any way that she could for leaving him behind. Another part of him, however, was worried sick about his mother. chastising him for carelessly acting out. He didn't want Kushina to die. Even after all the suffering he went through, he didn't believe death to be some sort of justice or revenge. She may have abandoned him, but he would never wish her death. His train of thought stopped when he spotted someone picking up flowers and plants. Oh, hello. The person was a girl with long black hair, wearing a casual kimono which had no sleeves. Hi, Naruto said distractedly and then looked at the girl's basket. What are doing? Naruto asked. The girl looked at the ground and then at Naruto again. Well, I'm picking plants, the girl said. Why? Naruto needed something to distract himself and he was a bit curious. The girl bit her lip. To make medicine for a friend, the girl said after a while. Oh, Naruto said awkwardly. Well, the distraction was over and his mind strayed back to his mother. Is something wrong? The girl asked as she continued to pick various plants off the ground. No, it's okay. It's my problem, Naruto said with a frown. Sometimes it helps to talk to someone. I can keep a secret, the girl reassured. It would seem weird to trust a complete stranger with one's problems. They girl seemed nice though, so Naruto gave it a shot. Well, my sensei's sick, Naruto said after a pause. He missed the girl momentarily stiffening after he said those words. The girl looked hesitant for a moment and then asked, is it anything serious? Yeah, she was poisoned, Naruto said softly. There was a long pause after that, and Naruto had half a mind to just say his goodbyes and leave, but the girl cut in. I make a lot of medicine. Maybe I can help, the girl suggested. You can? Naruto asked in surprise. I might be able to, if you can tell me the symptoms, the girl replied. Well, she was breathing a lot and her face was red. I don't know anything else, Naruto said frustratedly. How did she get the poison? The girl asked. She was cut on the shoulder, Naruto said. He expected more questions but was surprised when the girl pulled out a small bottle from a pouch. This should work for most poison that has entered the body through exposed flesh or open wounds. I'm quite sure this is the right one to deal with your problem. Your sensei must drink everything. It will forcibly release the poison from your sensei's system. Be warned, she will have a heavy fever with a lot of sweating. That will be indication that the serum is working. Afterwards she should be as good as new, the girl said as handed him the small bottle. Are you sure this will work? Naruto asked warily. He knew that he didn't give enough detail about the poison to know exactly what they were dealing with. Besides, this could make things worse. I'm positive it will work. By the way, my name is Haku, Haku said with a smile. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto said. It was nice to meet you, Naruto-san, Haku said as she started walking away. Wait, Naruto said, but the girl was already gone. He lingered there for a while longer and analyzed things. He had no choice. There was just little anyone could do, and this was the only option he had. He was a person for taking gambles, but he was still a bit wary of this one. He resolved to follow his gut and made a dash to Tazuna's home. He burst through the door and raced to Kushina's room. He stopped when he heard voices inside. We need to leave now. Her condition is getting worse, he heard Tsunami say. How long will it take us to get help and come back? Kakashi asked. I'm not sure, but we don't have much of a choice, Tsunami said. Naruto took that as his cue and barged into the room with a bottle. I can help, Naruto said hurriedly. Naruto, what are doing? Kakashi sighed. I got the cure, Naruto said. What are you talking about? Kakashi asked with a frown. Naruto didn't answer and made his way to his mother. He lifted the bottle, but before he could do anything else, Kakashi grabbed his wrist. What is this? Kakashi asked suspiciously as he eyed the bottle. Let me go. This will help her, Naruto protested. Where did you get it? Kakashi continued to ignore the blonde's protests. Kakashi, let him go, Kushina rasped out tiredly. Everyone looked at her wide-eyed. This was the first she was awake ever since the attack, and it still looked like she was struggling to remain conscious. Kakashi was too shocked to move, so Naruto wrenched his arm out of the copy nin's grip. He went up to his mother. It will get rid of the poison, Naruto said quietly. Kushina nodded slowly. What do I have to do? Kushina-sama, you can't. I trust him, Kushina cut through in pain. It was getting harder to even speak. Naruto was surprised to hear that, but then decided to focus on the task at hand. He helped Kushina to sit up. She flinched a number of times from the pain and offered her the bottle carefully. Kushina started drinking the serum. After she was finished, Naruto helped her lay down. You're gonna get a bad fever soon, but after that you should be fine, Naruto said. Kushina nodded and then closed her eyes. Naruto, Kakashi started. I got it from a person who knows poisons, Naruto said. You can't just trust anyone you meet. Kakashi admonished. What else could I do? By the time you and Tsunami got back from that person you're trying to find, then it could already be too late. Naruto said irritably. There's no point in arguing. What's done is done. I will stay by Kushina's side to see if there is any progress. You two need to leave her in peace, Tsunami said. Kakashi and Naruto left the room, but Kakashi was far from finished. I'm very disappointed in you, Naruto, Kakashi said. Up yours. I should be saying the same thing to you. I know how close you are to my parents. Disappointed? Well, get used to it, you freaking hypocrite. Naruto fumed and then left a gobsmacked Kakashi in the corridor. Kakashi was shocked to the core. How did Naruto find out? It was late into the night and Naruto was sleeping on the living room sofa. He kept on shifting around. His face held discomfort. All he could see was black. It felt like he was falling. Just as suddenly he felt his body hit water. His eyes shot open and he stood on his feet. He looked around. This was not Tezuna's home. It was a sewer. He was familiar with places like this because he had to use some sewers to hide from village attacks. He looked down and saw water that was knee-high. He looked up and could see a lot of pipes on the walls and ceiling. That's when he heard it. It was faint at first, but he could suddenly pick up little tremors that resembled breathing. He wondered what on earth could have caused that. He looked ahead and could see a path which was leading to somewhere. With little choice, and curiosity at its peak, he ventured deeper into the sewer. He approached an entrance and felt the trembling on the ground increase dramatically. This was very weird. He was very much aware of his surroundings for this to be a mere dream. Once he walked into the space, he saw, what he had to admit, the largest cage-like structure that he ever laid his eyes on. On the other side of the cage was complete darkness. Then he saw a mouth form from within the darkness in something akin to a yawn. A rumbling earth tremor filled the room and Naruto was suddenly gazing into two blazing blood-slitted eyes that bored into his very being. So, the voice was so deep and heavy that it shook the room. Blood-red eyes analyzed the blonde for a brief moment and then the beast continued, my jailer decided to grace me with his presence and pay me a visit. Naruto stared into blood-red eyes in trepidation. Whatever was in there was huge. Hell, its eyes looked bigger than his body. He stood his ground, however. If that thing in the cage would attack him, then he'd rather die fighting than submit to being a coward. Knuckleheaded to the end. Oh come on, the voice boomed, although it did not seem to have shouted the words. I can literally smell the fear emitting from your body. Naruto glared defiantly at the huge clouded figure. Where the hell am I? Who the hell are you? Naruto questioned. Oh, so he finally speaks. The thing sounded amused, and that made Naruto grit his teeth in anger. Hey, you stupid moron. Where the hell am I? And who are you? Huh? Naruto shouted angrily. Who am I? Take a guess. This thing was playing with him and Naruto was anything but amused. You know what? Screw you. I'm outta here. Naruto fumed as he looked back to the path he came from. But before he could move, the figure continued on. Ha ha ha. You're such a brat. Okay. How about I give you a little riddle to figure out who I am, the figure suggested. Naruto looked into Red eyes in disbelief. What the hell? What's red, has 9 tails, and attacked Konoha 12 years ago? The figure questioned. Naruto squinted his eyes. Well, he wounded up here so he might as well participate. His sense of logic was overruled by a 12-year-old's curiosity. At first he didn't understand what the riddle meant, but it didn't take long for him to piece everything together, especially with the clue of 9 tails, and his eyes widened dramatically. Kyuubi, he whispered in horror. The 9-tailed fox was a popular subject in the academy and many were told of its malicious and destructive power. Something did not make sense however. Got it in one go. I'm genuinely surprised. Well, that was only half true. The Kyuubi wasn't that shocked that Naruto figured out its identity. I mean, the clues were pretty much straightforward. Naruto glared at the fox. He was not stupid and he felt insulted at the Kyuubi's jab. Does this mean I'm dead? Naruto inquired with gritted teeth. It only made sense that he was met with death. The fox was killed by his father, which meant he had joined it in the afterlife. Oh, how I wish for that. But sadly you are not one of the departed. Kyuubi looked bored, as if it suddenly dawned on it who exactly it was talking to. Then where am I? Naruto asked in confusion. If he wasn't dead then, what? This is getting tedious quite quickly. I'll summarize it for you. You were in your mindscape, more vaguely your mind. I was sealed into you the day you were born by your father to stop my murderous rampage, which wasn't really my doing, mind you, and I've lived in this cage for the past 12 years. You can understand that, can't you? Kyuubi inquired lazily with a scratch to its head. That revelation did very little to dwindle Naruto's questions, but it did clear quite a few others. This was the reason that he was the village pariah, scorned and hated. How could Minato do this to him, above everything else? He looked at the cage and saw the little paper with the seal on it. This was unfair. He could admit to hating his parents now. After everything he had been through, this had to be the worst revelation to date. Not only did they leave him to rot, but they left him with the full knowledge that he had a Biju within him. He tried to bite back the angry tears, but to no avail. His body was shaking with unbridled rage. Fuck this. Fuck the world. If this was how life was going to treat him, then he had enough of it. What was the point of trying to be Hokage when all the villagers saw him as the fox? What was the point of being a shinobi when he was stuck with the woman that he refused to see as a mother? What was the point of living when there was no reason to? He just could not take it anymore. For goodness sake, enough of the waterworks already. Your life sucks. Get over it. Naruto fixed his glare at the towering fox. You ruined my life. Casting the blame on me won't change a thing. Like I said before, it was beyond my power what happened on that day. The fox raised an eyebrow at the hatred radiating from the child. It was obvious that the boy was not listening to reason anymore. Still angry. What are you gonna do? Fight me? I wouldn't recommend that. If I end up killing you, then we would both die. Do yourself a favor and find a nice quiet corner to drown in your sorrows. Your life is pathetic enough. Don't look for sympathy from me. Kyuubi did not even flinch in its verbal assault. So that's what it's come to. Naruto's vision turned red with overflowing anger. I'm going to kill you. No matter what. I'm going to make sure that you die. Ha. Compared to your failure of a battle with that missing nin individual, then you can bet I don't expect much from you. Naruto formed the familiar hand seal with his fingers. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 200 shadow clones suddenly appeared, all with the same clouded rage. Kyuubi expected them to charge at it but was a little surprised when they split and formed a half circle around the cage. The Naruto in the middle walked forward with his arm drawn back. Wind quickly started to gather around his hand. All the other clones proceeded to do the same. Futen. Senpuken. All Naruto's shot their fists forward and a huge gust of power wind struck the surprised Kyuubi's face with so much force that the fox actually stumbled on its footing. Naruto quickly unsealed 2 kunai and a few shuriken. He quickly charged at the fox at a remarkably fast pace. He charged at the dazed fox and threw his weapons, striking the fox on the side of its face. Naruto grinned, but his victory tragically ended when it was made obviously clear that the Kyuubi's face had not even been scratched. The Kyuubi slowly got to its feet and looked at the tiny child in annoyance. Kyuubi had to admit, the boy caught it off guard with his attack. It also realized that Naruto was inside the cage, but ultimately made no attempt to attack him. Kushina taught you a little more than I gave her credit for. Kyuubi rolled its eyes when it saw the confusion of the blonde. Come of it. Do you really think that I wouldn't be aware of everything that has been happening in your pitiful life? I would have added my own piece if it wasn't for this seal. If I can find a way out of here, then I would make sure to eat you out of your misery. Ah! Naruto screamed and charged at the beast with the intent to kill. You're still remarkably weak. Kyuubi frowned and looked down at Naruto, who was trying and failing to slash its gigantic leg. Too weak for me to even face in a human form. Human form. Like you can even do that, you bastard. Naruto screeched as he continued to attack the Kyuubi's left leg. I'm created out of pure chakra. With that comes the ability to mold myself into anything I wish. I'm a fox because I find those creature intriguing and clever. The 9 tails asserts my dominance as the most powerful of the 9 biju. Kyuubi yawned as it watched the boy continue to attack in his rage-induced state. Bring it on, bastard. Naruto challenged as he created a distance from the fox, albeit a minuscule amount. Kyuubi looked at the boy in irritation. It was really starting to lose its patience. Be gone with you, before my temper flares. I ain't going anywhere until you're dead. He flipped the Kyuubi off. Stupid retarded fox. Kyuubi knew that Naruto was goading it to commence battle. The Kyuubi could not help but shake its head. Naruto was a bit stronger than it originally realized, but his ability still paled in comparison to its. Adding to the fact that Naruto was not in his right state of mind, then it would be understandable why he was spewing anything hateful that came to mind. Oh well, the Kyuubi thought, it did warn him. A large cloud of burning red chakra surrounded the fox. Naruto quickly jumped backwards to avoid the heat and watched in amazement as a huge ball of chakra formed right in front of him. After some time, the ball started to shrink, slowly forming a humanoid silhouette. As soon as it reached the required size and shape, the burning chakra dissipated. In its place stood a very nude and very attractive red-headed girl, who had blood-red eyes, plump pink lips, a developing body, and looked no older than Naruto himself. Naruto did a double take when he saw what was in front of him. A huge blush formed as he proceeded to cover his eyes. You're a girl. Naruto sputtered out incredulously. His poor 12-year-old mind could not comprehend what just transpired. Your limited understanding of chakra still astonishes me to date. Kyuubi scoffed, a scowl dawning over her delicate features. I told you that I am made of pure chakra. I can turn into anything I wish. I don't have a gender, but I may choose to wield any sex I see fit. To emphasize her point, she turned herself into a very handsome male, with short red hair and an angular face, who was still nude. Put on some clothes already. Naruto shouted out as he witnessed the transformation. He had no qualms with seeing a boy naked. He was a shinobi, but the thing that was in front of him was not a boy at all. He refused to view the Kyuubi as anything other than a fox, but that didn't mean he wasn't aware of modesty. My goodness. You really have issues, boy, Kyuubi said as he clicked his fingers and a standard kimono covered his body. I got issues. What the hell? I'm not the one having sex changes. Naruto shouted. This coming from a boy who developed a jutsu that gives the wielder the illusion of a female. Kyuubi inquired non-committedly. Shut up, you damn fox. That's different. Naruto yelled in anger. Whatever you say, kid. You're a kid too. Naruto shot back and then frowned confusion. You look like my age. Kyuubi rolled his eyes again. One of the drawbacks of being here is the fact that I have only technically been alive for 12 years. Although I am able to retain my fox form at its maximum, every other form requires me to accommodate the age with a suitable body. Naruto just stared at the other boy. Still don't get it? Well, it's not your fault that you're stupid. Or maybe it is, Kyuubi goaded cynically. Naruto's anger flared and he glared at Kyuubi with hatred. Now, I believe you said something about killing me. Kyuubi stretched his left arm and a sword quickly formed in his hand. Let's see what you got. Naruto stared at the Kyuubi seriously. He was still furious at the fox and his shit of a life. He made up his mind. His life was practically over anyway. He was going to end it here and take that damn fox with him. He put as much chakra into his feet and shot, like a bullet, to Kyuubi. Kyuubi managed to narrowly dodge the attack and quickly turned to regard the boy. My, that was very fast, Kyuubi said evenly. Naruto quickly charged again with a kunai in hand. He aimed for the Kyuubi's face, but the Kyuubi blocked the attack with little to no effort. So that's all Kushina has taught you. One jutsu and a minimal increase in speed. Well, I guess it's understandable with the period of time that you had, but I was hoping for better, Kyuubi said scoldingly. He was surprised when he felt harsh wind hit his back and violently flew a few feet away from the blonde before hitting the ground with a harsh thud. Kyuubi quickly got to his feet and finally noticed something he had forgotten. Your Kage Bunshin are still here. Kyuubi briefly assessed the damage and was surprised to see a lot of cuts on his back. Not bad. You caught me by surprise. I wonder why you weren't as strategic when you were facing the missing nin. Naruto tried to take advantage of Kyuubi's distracted state by rushing at the fox. He cocked his hand back. Fuden. Senpuken. Kyuubi did not even raise his head as he proceeded to slap Naruto's wrist before the blonde even struck him, breaking it in the process. Arg. Naruto grunted out as he jumped back. His wrist felt immensely painful and he could do nothing but nurse it the only way he knew how. Kyuubi finally looked at Naruto. He raised an eyebrow as he watched the blonde nurse his wrist. Did I do that? He made a show of seeming confused. You poor thing. Naruto hissed in pain and anger. He looked back and was shocked to discover that his clones, his backup, had disappeared in a plump of smoke. Now, who's going to fight your battles for you? Kyuubi mocked gleefully. Ah, Naruto's charge was filled with fury and desperation. It was all or nothing. Kyuubi's right arm shot forward and grabbed Naruto's throat. Naruto tried prying himself out of the Kyuubi's grip but it was useless. Kyuubi brought the blonde within an inch of his face and proceeded to whisper, you know what? The whole, if one of us dies we both do, is a theory anyway. I'll figure out another way out of this place, but first. Naruto's eyes shot open as he felt Kyuubi's sword impale his abdomen. He stiffened and looked into condescending blood-red eyes. I hope you enjoy the afterlife. He ha 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 ha. Those were the last words Naruto heard before his vision was engulfed in complete darkness. MHMHM. He could hear muffled noises, but he could not distinguish what the sound was. MHMHMMHM. There it was again. All Naruto could see was black. Was he really dead now? Kyuubi really did a number on him. The only good thing that he could think of was the fact that he died fighting. But what now? He was dead, right? For some reason it did not seem that way. MHHMHM. What the hell was that sound? It was starting to annoy him. Couldn't he spend the rest of his afterlife in peace? He had a miserable childhood, bad parents, and he was the most hated and loathed individual in Konoha. At the very least this place would finally give him the solace and contentment that he longed for. MMMHHMHBM. Mom up. Naruto would have thrown his hands in the air if he could move. He decided to concentrate on the sound again. Mom up. Mackay up. He was starting to hear it more clearly. It was a voice. A very feminine voice, and it seemed to be calling to him. He groggily opened his eyes. He was very shocked to see that he was still in the mindscape. Didn't he die? This didn't make any sense. And here I thought I actually killed you. Naruto looked to his side and saw Kyuubi's female form, which was kneeling and looking at him in something akin to relief. He quickly scrambled away from the girl, fear overtaking his sense of logic. The girl was Biju and she had proven very capable of killing him. The fact that he was alive at all was very alarming. Oh, relax. I'm not going to hurt you. Upon seeing the disbelieving look, Kyuubi continued, and besides, you're alive right now, aren't you? Naruto continued to stare at Kyuubi in bewilderment. Kyuubi sighed and rolled her eyes. Now that you've gotten all that anger out of your system, do you feel better? Naruto was frozen in place, but after some time he actually analyzed her inquiry. Now that he thought about it, he felt a lot more calmer than he did before. He looked down and noticed that his body didn't have a scratch and his wrist was just fine. This whole situation was too confusing, however, so all he could was offer a numb nod. Good. Kyuubi chirped and got to her feet. What the hell? Naruto finally blurted out. What's the matter now? Kyuubi asked, raising an eyebrow. Naruto was too lost to answer. Kyuubi sighed. Look, you were angry and irrational. I felt it was better letting you vent that anger instead of keeping it inside. Kyuubi shrugged her shoulders. So all this was for me to vent out my anger? Naruto questioned with wide eyes. Was it really possible that he was the container of a demented fox? Pretty much. Kyuubi scratched her face and her mouth formed a whimsical smile. Although, killing you was its own reward. You're very disrespectful and rude. Naruto scowled. Are you kidding me? Kidding. Kind of. Serious. Maybe so, Kyuubi proclaimed with a thoughtful pose. Why aren't I dead? Naruto settled for knowing facts instead of succumbing to Kyuubi's mind games. Because I never killed you. Remember when I told you that if one of us died then the other would join? Well, that's true actually. The only way for me to be free from you is through extraction. Kyuubi looked at her outfit and frowned. God, this is ugly. She snapped her fingers and a new, more accentuating, kimono appeared. Oh, that's way better. Males really have bland taste. Why are you a girl again? Naruto asked more calmly. It didn't seem like Kyuubi was going to attack him, so he decided to just wing it and see what would transpire. I like being female. Kyuubi looked at her body, analyzed her outfit and then continued, I'm not sure why, but I think this suits me more than a male image. Maybe it is because I've only ever been sealed in females until I was sealed into you. You were sealed before? Naruto asked in surprise. Yep. Look, about the incident 12 years ago. It really wasn't my fault. I never meant for any of that to happen. Kyuubi said honestly. Then why did you attack Konoha? Naruto asked. I was being controlled by a man wearing this weird mask. I didn't know what I was doing until it was too late. Why should I believe that? Naruto quarreled. Because I'm telling the truth. I give you my word. That's not good enough. Naruto quickly cut her off in stride. After everything that I've been through, I just can't trust anyone. I could show you what happened, Kyuubi offered quietly. What do you mean? Naruto asked with a frown. I have the power to channel my memories as well as yours into visual aspects. I can show you what really happened that night. The real reason your parents abandoned you. I could show you the truth in a nutshell, if you're willing. Kyuubi was a bit nervous for two reasons. The first being the fact that Naruto could really end up hating her for what she was about to do, and the other would be the fact that her offer could backfire indefinitely with disastrous results. How will I know if it's the truth? Naruto questioned with narrowed eyes. This time Kyuubi huffed and frowned in annoyance. You'll just have to trust me. If you're going to be living a life where you can't find it in yourself to trust anyone, then you will never get anywhere. Just this once, put your trust in me, That's all I'm asking for. Don't you want to know why your parents did what they did? Quote. Why are you doing this? Naruto finally asked. Simple. You humans make mistakes all the time, but there is always two sides to a story. I'm just tired of this constant on and off thing with your family. It affects the mindscape and makes me feel uncomfortable. At least this way you could better choose whether you like them or hate them without pause. Kyuubi said. Naruto thought about. He had always wanted to know the reason why his parents chose to abandon one of their children, so his decision was made quite swiftly. I hope you're not lying to me, Naruto said seriously. I give you my word as a Biju that everything you'll see will be the truth. Kyuubi made sure he knew how serious she was. Naruto mentally prepared himself and then looked at Kyuubi again. Show me, please. Alright. Kyuubi waved her left hand and a large orb appeared in front of them. I hope you're ready. Here we go, Kyuubi said as she and Naruto were both engulfed in white.